Bridge, post-Hollywood, but pre-metal.
Over the next 4 decades, y'all, Inge hobbited around the globe, seemingly engaging in whatever occupied her fancy at the time. In Zurich, she worked as a journalist for a weekly newspaper. She wrote a German-language memoir detailing her time as a spy. She published several books of poetry. None of these activities paid the bills, but Inge didn't actually need to work anymore. During her brief Hollywood career, she'd invested in the stock market. She lived off that wealth for the rest of her life and was even able to purchase 2 properties in New York. 4 years after divorcing Coleman, Inge flew to Tel Aviv, where she originally intended to spend most of her time in a kibbutz. But Hans Kruger, the manager of a luxury hotel there, just had to be super cute and ruined those plans. Back in the 1930s, Inge's grandmother had purchased 3 farms in Israel. Our heroine sold the farms and then used the proceeds to purchase an apartment in Tel Aviv where she lived with Hans until divorcing him in 1972. Inge stayed single for about 12 minutes, dear friends, and then married Kurt Ginsberg. They lived primarily in Ecuador. Inge wrote several books based on her experiences in Ecuador. When Kurt passed away in 1999, Inge continued to split her time between Switzerland and the Big Apple.
Solo music career easer faces, but with a very different flavor.
By age 81, Ginsberg was a Holocaust survivor, an arms smuggler, a spy, a Hollywood composer, a journalist, an author, and an investor. But the most bizarre section of her resume is the final one.
Let me stay here some more time. I have a message for humankind.
2003, my little chili babies, Inge attended a concert at the Manhattan School of Music. And at some point in the evening, she befriended Lucia Caruso, who was there to watch her boyfriend, Pedro da Silva, perform his doctoral composition.
Ha!
Yes. That's awesome.
Again?
Now you can go.
Like Inge and Otto did in the late 1940s, Caruso and Da Silva later married and began music-based careers, and throughout the years, they remained in touch with their much older, charming friend. Inge firmly believed that it was essential for the elderly to maintain connections, especially with the younger generations. Now in her 90s, she remained convinced that she still had important messages for the world, but she could not manage to find an audience. In 2013, she submitted a song about suicide among young people to the Eurovision Song Contest. The song was eliminated during a preliminary selection round. Frustrated, but unwilling to surrender, Ginsberg switched gears and reverted back to the romantic 1950s-style lyrics that had brought her so much success decades earlier. The world's tastes had changed considerably. When she showed Caruso and Da Silva the new songs that she'd written, they were not interested. Although he obviously wanted to support his friend, Da Silva just could not relate to that musical style. And then one day, Inge brought him a song about worms eating our flesh after we die, and a stage light went off in Da Silva's head.
She started writing these lyrics about blood and death, and I told her, this sounds like death metal lyrics. And she goes, death metal, what is that?
The young guitarist played a few jaunty death metal ditties for Inge. They didn't sound like anything she'd heard before, and she loved it. Soon, Da Silva had constructed a metal band around her. He, Caruso, and others accompanied her on various instruments: the guitar, piano, drums, organ, and oud. In 2014, Inge and the Tritone Kings began rehearsing and filming music videos, which Ginsberg paid for. Her stage presence remained pretty consistent regardless of the venue: long gowns and pearls, paired with lyrics about the Holocaust, climate change, mental health, and other issues. The band submitted to the Eurovision Song Contest again the following year with a song that translates as "Laugh at Death."
Final chorus, scream screaming with intent.
The Kings resubmitted to Eurovision a final time in 2016, but were unsuccessful. They did, however, secure a spot on Switzerland's Got Talent. Remember our shared love of Swiss reality television from the intro? And absolutely shattered the audience. The following year, the band released a music video for I'm Still Here, in which Inge stands in front of a screen showing images of refugees and yells about her grandmother and 4 cousins, all of whom were killed in German camps.
I survived the Holocaust, but the biggest loss was my mother tongue. Vienna, where I belong, turned into a nightmare. That's why
You keep classifying her vocal style as hollering, screaming, etc. Is that accurate?
Sort of. She's 95 years old at this point. She's not covering the number of the beast.
Does Ginsberg technically sing then? Or are her performances more spoken word?
Probably the latter. She considered herself an author, not a singer.
I'm a rap singer. You can YouTube me. Inge Ginsberg, the oldest rapper on history.
But she also maintained that as a genre, metal suited her best because she didn't necessarily need to sing well or carry a tune.
That seems a bit offensive.
It's not. Think about Rage Against the Machine. No one's ever going to accuse Zach of carrying a melody, but he's also not a rapper. Rage is rage.
With the short shot, sure to make the bodies drop it, no copy, yo, no corners of co-op.
Another band where the message often loomed taller than the band itself. I do wonder if Inge was aware of them. I imagine she would have loved what they do. By 2018, the New York Times had taken interest in Ginsberg's life. A short documentary by filmmaker Leah Gallant appeared in the opinions section, which featured footage of Inge and her bandmates. In that film, Inge noted that elderly people are often excluded from life. She wanted to prove that people of an advanced age could still contribute to society in a meaningful way. Though she'd published poetry collections in an earlier segment of her life, Inge didn't perceive her metal lyrics through that same lens. She wasn't one to appreciate flowery language for its petals. Heavy metal existed, she thought, as a means to deliver messages.
The first one is don't destroy what you can't replace. But the second is a very heavy message to it. You can't avoid that, so laugh about it. Follow your own path. Don't be a sheep in the herd.
Whatever the goal, the Metalgramma consistently viewed heavy metal as a force much larger than itself. Gallant's documentary follows Inge and the Tritone Kings to the band's audition for America's Got Talent. A visibly nervous Inge wishes for peace and quiet. During the audition itself, we see Inge forget the lyrics. They are not selected to move forward.
Outro, Death and Legacy.
Today's story, friends, is different from previous episodes of Josephied history. See, we tend to focus on fascinating people who, in our own humble estimation, haven't received their due, and most of those folks hail from eras that are far removed from our own. Shajar al-Dur reigned during the 13th century, for example. Mull Cutpurse was robbing fools and establishing her criminal empire at the same time that Willie Shakes was trying to pay the rent with Hamlet. La Maupin charmed her way out of death sentences in the late 1600s, but Inge Ginsberg passed away less than a year ago. Unlike our other heroines, we don't need to speculate much about document authenticity. We can skip attempting to calculate what percentage of the available lore is real. In fact, the piece of information in Ginsberg's tale that proved the most challenging and time-consuming to verify was, believe it or not, exactly which year her band appeared on America's Got Talent. My sources listed everything from 2013 to 2017. I finally confirmed that the actual air date was February 2016. In the spring of 2020, Inge contracted the COVID-19 virus at the Zurich care facility where she lived, and although she recovered, she passed away just over a year later at the age of 99. Her official cause of death was determined to be heart failure, but her bandmates believe that she died from isolation, that the combination of boredom, loneliness, and depression COVID forced upon her formed too great a strain for Inge to lift. In a BBC interview conducted shortly after Ginsberg's death, De Silva noted that his friend was extremely strong-willed. She always spoke her mind, he said. Too much for most people, especially here in America. He and Caruso chuckled as they told stories about Inge stomping to the head of the supermarket lines and declaring that she didn't want to wait. When they'd explain that she had to remain in line, Inge would say, "If you follow lines, you end up in Auschwitz." Caruso and De Silva described a woman who was never without lovers, even into her 90s, and who would dispense advice to her much younger friends. "I'm never without a man," she would tell them, "and I always have a spare one in case the first one doesn't work." Caruso recalled receiving impromptu instructions on how to seduce a man while cooking. With Inge around, she said, there was never a day without laughter. In the interview's final note, the reporter asked Caruso and De Silva what they thought Inge, this remarkable woman who'd led so many different and fascinating lives, was proudest of. Caruso's response was swift and delivered without a second's hesitation. "Surviving," she said. And that, cats and kittens, is the story of Inge Ginsberg. She did it all. Loudly. Thank you so very much to Glenn Baston, who requested this Josephied history. We appreciate all of your support, and take it easy, friends. We will see you next time.
Thank you so much, CamannWordsmith patrons, for sponsoring this series and everything we do. Treat yourself to a nice Pringle or a nap or something. You've earned it.